We often hear from parents on Grieving Out Loud, but one perspective that's been missing is that of siblings, those who've lost someone they love to fentanyl poisoning. Today, we're kicking off a 3-part series on sibling loss. And for this first episode, I'm joined by my own children to talk about how the loss of their sister Emily in 2018 has shaped their lives. Like any family, my kids are each unique, and they process their grief in very different ways. My daughter Abby, now 24, has been deeply involved in the mission of Emily's Hope. She's the talented artist behind the characters in our substance use prevention curriculum. But she's also found comfort in living outside of the community where everyone knows how her sister died. While she agreed to join us on the podcast, you'll notice she doesn't say much, and that's okay. Abby has always been more reserved, but her grief runs just as deep. Then there's my youngest, Adam, now 23. He's an extrovert, a deep thinker, and someone who's never been afraid to talk openly about Emily or the fentanyl crisis. He's been involved in charity events and outreach and does most of the talking in this episode. His perspective is powerful, raw, and honest. Finally, I also want to acknowledge my stepson, Jordan, who's 24. He was invited to be part of this conversation, but declined, and I completely respect that. Grief is personal, and no one should feel pressure to share it publicly. I just happen to do that every day, which is why this podcast is called Grieving Out Loud. So this is a podcast I've been thinking about doing for about 6 years. It's been about 6.5 since your sister Emily died from fentanyl poisoning. And I've been thinking a lot about the different things that Abby and Adam, as her siblings, have been through. And I think that's probably changed over the years. But I want to go back to 6.5 years ago when we lost your sister, and Adam was 16, Abby was 17. Both in high school. They are now adults. I think it's going to give us some different perspectives of what it was like as a teenager versus how you look at it now as an adult. But let's talk about that. You were in high school. We can go back even further and talk about how things were not going great at home with Emily for quite some time and how that impacted you.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I would definitely say like the last 2 to 3 years of her life, I felt very disconnected to her. Would see her probably once or twice a month. It would be very off and on. And in a weird way, it kind of felt like Emily passed away like 2 years before she even died in the first place. So pretty much for me, all throughout like middle school and then, early high school when she was still alive, it felt like a pretty big disconnect.
It's funny that you say that, Adam, because I remember standing in Emily's room at one point crying, feeling like my daughter had already died because she had changed so much and had disconnected herself from us so much because of the addiction. But your like 16-year-old brain or 15 or 14-year-old brain, you couldn't really understand what was going on with her, could you?
No, not really. No, I wasn't really familiar with the concept of hard drugs and fentanyl and stuff like that. I was very like innocent at the time and didn't really get exposed to it. And a couple of the moments that really stuck out to me was the fact when, I was younger, she was extremely family oriented and was very passionate about, our traditions and family events. And when she started missing that stuff and like missing going to my piano concert and stuff like that, that's when I started to realize like, oh, this is something that's not normal. And I didn't fully grasp the reality of it in the moment, but I definitely knew that something was off. I just couldn't quite pinpoint it exactly to hard drugs.
Right. One person's addiction in a family sets the whole family off kilter. I think it really affects everyone in different ways. Abby, I want to give you a chance to talk about, as a teenager, what were your impressions, what was going on?
Just a lot of yelling. And fighting. And cops at the house. And hiding in my room.
We did call the police at one point because Emily had drugs in the house, and we really thought that would scare her and set her on the right course, but that obviously didn't work. How do you think, Abby, like you were 17 when your sister died, and now you're 24. How do you look at it maybe differently now than you did then?
Well, I understand addiction better. People can't control it.
Were you guys angry with your sister when you were younger, do you think, for the way she was acting? I mean, if you were, I think that would be a perfectly normal.
I was always used to her being dramatic and the center of attention, so.
She was very dramatic, even as a little kid, right?
She was always like that, yeah. I mean, I knew she was always dramatic, but there'd be times when I would come home and, you know, she'd be yelling at you, or she'd be making a scene out of something that really didn't need to be made a scene. And it kind of just like frustrated me. And it showed a lot of what I shouldn't do. And, you know, Emily and I have a 5-year age gap. So it kind of put me in the mindset of, okay, 5 years from now, I'm going to make sure I don't cause these problems and don't yell at my mom's face directly and cause her to cry and stuff like that. So a mix of, you know, frustration and being confused, and then also a little bit of sadness, just seeing like the effects that her fights and, you know, dramatic scenes had on, you know, everyone in our family and even like friends and so on.
Yeah, her friends too. She lost a lot of friends that you guys were close to along the way, of her friends.
Yeah.
Abby, you're closer in age, about 3.5 years apart from Emily. You guys were close for a while.
Yeah.
When you were little. Did you feel that there was a distance when she started using?
Yeah. I think it's hard to be around people when you're using hard drugs, especially with the shame that comes with it.
Do you think she was ashamed?
Yeah.
How do you know?
I feel like you could just tell by her facial expressions too. And it would also be a scenario where we would be out like getting dinner or like doing something fun. And then 2 or 3 hours into it, there'd be an instant switch, which I'm sure a lot of addicts go through, where they just need their fix. And then once you get to that point of, you know, spending time with her, you would just feel kind of like the mood would entirely change, and you would feel, you know, helpless. You're like, oh, I can't change how Emily acts right now. Like, she just needs to go off and get her fix and then come back and she'll be better.
I felt that too a lot, that she would be fine and be happy and enjoying stuff with us as a family. And then all of a sudden it was like a switch went off, and it was probably because the drug was wearing off. And I didn't always know what she was using or how or when or any of those things. But I definitely saw that happen.
Yeah.
So do you think that this trauma that happened in our family with her drug use, her change in her behavior, and her ultimate death impacted you as a human being, as a person, and how the course of your life?
Well, nothing was the same ever again.
Have you lost a loved one to overdose or fentanyl poisoning? I'd like to invite you to share their story on our new Emily's Hope Memorial website called More Than Just a Number. They were our children, siblings, cousins, husbands, wives, aunts, uncles, and friends. So much more than just a number. You can submit a memorial today on morethanjustanumber.org.
Did it change the way you view the world?
Yes. Just that life can throw whatever at you without you expecting it. I think it's actually really helped my outlook on life.
Yeah, what do you mean by that? Because I was going to ask you if you thought there were any benefits or any positive ways you were changed by something so horrible. Because I think there are in myself. I think I'm a less judgmental person, more compassionate than I was. So how did it change you?
Anything can happen at any moment, and anyone can die at any moment. So you might as well enjoy life and not like stress out about it. Love the people around you.
I also think my perception of a human being changed a lot. And I think a lot of that happened through volunteering with Emily's Hope and just meeting people who have gone through addiction and seeing a lot more people come out with their stories after, you know, seeing Emily's story. So that helped a lot, like with my grief. And then as far as personal transformation, I think the first 3-4 years, I was still kind of immature and still trying to process it all. But I think in the past couple of years after like wrapping up college and moving to a new city and meeting new people, I've kind of realized that my perception on life and how I carry myself is very different compared to a lot of people my age. Because a lot of people my age haven't gone through a traumatic event like losing their sibling. So it's made me realize how much stronger of a person I am. And I feel like I can pretty much handle anything that really comes in my way, like going forward, because, you know, I went through that at 16, which is a lot to handle at that age. So
So you're talking about resilience.
Yeah.
That's one of the things you're talking about. Do you think you're more resilient, Abby?
For sure, yeah. I think I am.
But also there are some negative effects of going through this trauma. And I think, Abby, could you talk about some of the ways that you feel like it impacted you and your emotional, mental health?
It was sad. Sad time.
Right.
But like, I think what Adam mentioned earlier, like leaving my hometown and like going to a new city and going to college and meeting new people was really nice and refreshing.
You got a fresh start where everyone didn't label you as Emily's sister or Emily's brother, because I am in the public eye in our community and people knew the story, right? And so people are probably constantly saying to you, I'm sorry about your sister here, or...
Yeah, they don't so much do that anymore because it's been a couple years, but definitely the first like 2-3 years, it was very annoying.
Annoying, because nobody wants to be defined by what happened to their sister. That's not your life.
Yeah, and it's just like the concept of drug addiction when it first happened was just very new to me, and I'm sure like with you. I didn't even know how to talk about it openly, and not even just about Emily, but about the concept overall. So like whenever people would bring it up and even like ask me about it, like a lot of people would expect me to be like an expert on drug addiction and drug awareness and fentanyl and so on. You know, I was still like 17, 18, trying to process it all. Like now I feel like I could have a pretty mature conversation about it. But in the moment, yeah, it was tough when people would like bring it up and you just didn't really know how to tackle that concept at all because it's such a complex thing.
I live in Minneapolis right now, and you see a lot more drug addiction there. And I went to art school, so I was around like very creative people and a lot of people who struggled from addiction. So it really helped me understand like those people better.
Do you think that it was difficult to witness your parents' grief through all this?
Yeah, it was hard. It's hard to see someone you love grieve.
Yeah, to add on to that, I would say it was really hard just because like you're like the closest person in my life, and seeing you just like, you know, break down emotionally and seeing you cry, it kind of like, as your son, it made me kind of feel helpless, and I wanted to do as much as possible to help you, but in the moment you really can't. And then also too, it's weird because like comparing parent grief with like sibling grief, it's so different, and there's such like a complex like divider, because with you, like so much of your life revolved around Emily, and it's just so different compared to with me, where I was 16, you know, thinking of college, having like a whole entire new life ahead of me. Kind of like tackling that difference was hard for me in the beginning, but I'm starting, the more time goes on, the more I'm starting to see how prevalent of a difference it is.
Well, I think there were so many years there where I was trying to help Emily, and I didn't always know the right way to help her or to, you know, fix things. I was trying to fix something that I couldn't fix, right? And that impacted you. And you're right, a lot of what I was doing overshadowed everything else because it seemed like such a difficult and desperate situation when she was using, and I was trying to stop her, and I was trying to change things, and I couldn't succeed. So I think that overshadowed a lot of our life as a family.
Yeah. And I know that's like a conversation that we've had where it's like you question if you did enough for Emily, or even like for me or for Abby or whatnot. But I think at the end of the day, and this is my personal opinion and people can disagree with me, but I think there's only so much a parent can do. There's only so much a teacher can do. At the end of the day, the individual has the choice to pick up the drug and use it and so on. And I honestly just think overall, especially in American society, parents and teachers and any type of like mentor role, most of those people are incredibly passionate about what they do, but are just way too hard on themselves. And I just think it's not fair for them to put all of the blame on themselves.
It was definitely something out of my control. And I think the other sad part about it is if there hadn't been fentanyl in the drug that Emily used, we probably would have been able to get her help, or eventually she hopefully would have gotten help.
Do you or a loved one suffer from substance use disorder? Please know help is available, and there's no shame at admitting you're dealing with a disease of the brain. We have a list of helpful resources on our website, emilyshope.charity. You can find a link in the show notes of this podcast.
One thing that worried me as a mom, and I've interviewed now other moms who've lost 2 or 3. There was a mom on this podcast who lost 5 of her 12 children to
Wow.
drugs. And that was one thing, you talk about the addictive gene, it's environment, it's trauma, it's grief, it's all of these things. And I was so worried about you guys heading out into your life in college and in the real world. I know all these substances are out there. Did it change losing your sister like this? Now, there are many people who've lost a sibling who go on to use and become addicted themselves and go on to die even, which is terrifying as a mom. But did that change the way you viewed substances when you went to college?
Yeah, I'm a pretty stubborn person. And when I don't want to do something, I don't do it.
I have to stop you for a second because when you were little, a child life specialist, I talked to her about you and your temper tantrums when you were like 2 and 3, Abby. And she said, that girl is never going to be a follower. She is going to be a leader. She is stubborn just because other people are doing something. She said that was your temperament all along. So I just have to.
Yeah, that describes Abby pretty well. Yeah.
Go ahead, Abby. Finish what you were saying.
I just have never had the desire or curiosity to do hard drugs. I have a line. I've been offered many times to do hard drugs, and I didn't know.
But you know that fentanyl can even be laced in illegal weed. It can be laced in pills that seem like they're real, like Percocet or a Xanax, if you don't know where it came from.
I've never gotten anything or have done anything off the streets.
Do you think that it's because of what you learned, because of what happened to your sister, the reason why you didn't do that, or just because it would not be something you'd want for yourself?
I don't want it for myself, and also the fentanyl problem is insane.
Did you ever talk to other kids when you were in college about fentanyl and let them know? Did they maybe not know, but you knew because of your sister?
Yeah, there's like not people I directly know, but people I know who their stuff was laced and they had to go to the hospital. Luckily, they didn't like die, but scary.
Kind of similar to Abby, and I'm sure with pretty much anyone our age who has gone through the traditional or somewhat traditional college has been presented that, of course. But yeah, I mean, I would also say I'm a pretty resilient person. Of course, there was a handful of times where I was given into peer pressure, but it was never to deal with any hardcore drugs, just the standard alcohol and stuff like that you kind of naturally see in a fraternity. But the thing for me after Emily's death that really stuck out that I think doesn't go through the mind of most people my age is that any time that was presented to me or the thought was brought up, I instantly thought of her and how I shouldn't dive into that, and how I should learn from her mistakes and not cause the same pain that she did for you and for the rest of our family. So it was always kind of a motivating force that was inside my head, not to fall into that trap and to persevere and stay away from all that negative stuff.
Let's talk about grief for a minute. Do you think your grief was different when you were 16 and 17 than it is now at 23 and 24?
I would say yes. I think the first couple of years, it was a lot more of frustration, and it was just me being kind of mad at whether it be the world or God or people involved with in Emily's life who helped contribute to her addiction. And also the grief was a lot more occurrent. It would happen at least once a week. I would think about it and kind of fall into that emotional trap. But now I think pretty much all of the frustration is gone and the confusion is kind of gone. I fully understand now kind of what happened. But for me, it's now just trying to make her proud and just trying to live on her legacy and just be the best man I can be. And, eventually grow a family, and I can tell them about Emily and her story. And yeah, it's interesting to see the transformation in a 6-year span, but I also understand that I'm 22 right now. I'm still growing and learning a lot. And I think my grief is going to continue to evolve even more over the next couple of years as well.
Do you think it will always be with you, that grief?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, a day doesn't go by where I don't think of Emily. And then the grief itself, it's like a roller coaster. It just comes at super random moments and super random surges of sadness and, prior frustration. And it's not like the frustration is fully gone, but it's definitely more tamed. And I'm just older, more mature. I understand it better.
How about you, Abby? How has the grief maybe changed over the years?
If anything, I'm more at peace with it. The longer time stretches.
Would you call that acceptance?
Yeah,
what happened?
I accepted it pretty early, though.
Yeah.
It's a part of me that I've accepted, so.
And I feel like I'm never going to be at that 100% acceptance just because I don't know. It's the thought of Emily like going through with all of that is something that I'm never going to be able to fully process. And I don't think any human being really can, but I definitely would say I'm up there in like the 90% like of acceptance, and it'll continue to go up, but it'll never be 100% for me.
And I always say on this podcast, and I hope that it's true, because I tell people that I think that the formation of the charity has actually helped all of you kids. Now, your stepbrother, Jordan, isn't here today. Jordan isn't a kind of person who wants to sit down and really talk about this, right? He doesn't want to take part in the podcast, which is okay, and that's perfectly fine. But he has also helped with Emily's Hope. He helps at events and things like that. You've helped at events. And Abby, as some of you may know, is our amazing artist who has done the artwork for the Emily's Hope substance use prevention curriculum, as well as the animation series, both the books and the animation series. And we're really proud of her and we're really grateful for that. Do you think that the work of Emily's Hope and, me starting this nonprofit has been more helpful than it has been hurtful? Because sometimes it can be hurtful too to always kind of be living in this space as well.
I think it's been helpful. I'm an artist, so you get your feelings out through your art, and it's nice to help children learn about addiction and stuff.
Well, we're also proud of you. I think it's wonderful that you are so talented and able. I don't think we could have hired a better artist, gone out and found somebody outside of our family to even do this work.
Well, it's different when you have a personal connection to it.
Yeah, what is different about that personal connection?
I care about it. I'm not just doing it for money.
And you care about it because you don't want to see other families go through the same kind of thing that we've been through.
Yeah, I mean, I am a huge fan of it. I think it's probably the best scenario that could have happened from her death. I just see it as the most optimized way for her legacy to live on. And then I think the most like prominent moments that make me like very proud of like what you created and Emily's Hope overall is that whenever I go to an event like the art show or the poker run or even come into the office and like see the employees, it's just so cool for me to see a group of people come together collectively to help solve the same issue. It's a beautiful thing to see, and it all was created from, Emily and yourself. So
do you ever feel like too much attention is put on Emily and her life because of this? Because I do know I'm talking about her all the time and the problem all the time.
Okay, but she would have loved it. So
yeah, she would have.
Now explain what you mean.
She loves attention.
Yeah, she did.
Makes sense. She gets so much after her death too.
And I also think there's not really another way to go about it without doing that. Because that, like, in a weird way, and it's really weird to say this out loud, but like Emily's life is like the main marketing driver of the nonprofit and what allows it to be successful because it carries so much personal connection. And I just can't really see a nonprofit like this being successful without you doing that. So like, I'm not going to lie, in the first like year or two, all that attention around Emily's life and everything with the nonprofit, it was hard. But like taking a step back a couple of years later, it makes you realize that that's what makes it successful and that's what makes it special overall.
Well, you're also more mature than you were when we first started. So it's probably easier for you to understand that than when you were a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid.
Right.
You guys are just as important to me as Emily was. And I worry sometimes you won't know that because of all the work I'm doing involving what happened to your sister.
I never thought that, so.
That's good. People ask me.
I mean, it's a reasonable thought. But yeah, I don't think, same with Abby. I don't think I've really had that thought. Because I, obviously, you're my mom. I know who you are as a person. I know you're a good person. And I know you're doing it as a good intention. And I don't really see it ever as taking away energy or love from me. Like, I know that you love me and I get more than enough from you. So yeah, definitely not a problem for me, or I would say for Abby as well.
Yeah.
People can't always see what's going on inside a family.
Right.
They see the exterior and me talking about Emily and doing this work, but then I don't talk about her constantly when we're together, like we were together all day today. And we knew we were going to do this podcast, but we're not constantly talking about her or what happened.
Right? And that's just the perception of being in the public eye, like for literally any celebrity or any news anchor or whatnot, the only questions that are mainly going to be asked is about the stuff that they see in the public eye. So,
Right.
As one of the nation's strongest financial organizations, First Premier Bank and Premier Bank Card have the strength to do good. We support nearly 700 organizations and nonprofits. Our employees give more than 30,000 volunteer hours annually. And we are continually seeking ways to make South Dakota an even better place to live. It's the Premier way. First Premier Bank and Premier Bank Card.
What do you wish people understood about addiction that maybe they don't?
That it's not a choice and that it can happen to anyone.
mm-hmm. And I also think the idea of the addictive gene, I think, is really scary and something that I didn't really fully know of until Emily died. And I think a lot of people have it and don't realize it. And I think a lot of people should be more aware of the problems that are like inherited deeper into their family. And then also the idea of drug addiction being infiltrated into any family anywhere around the world, regardless of wealth, social class whatsoever. I know, like, just with Emily's Hope, I've talked to a handful of people from a wide variety of backgrounds. And I know it's kind of an obvious concept to be like, oh, it can happen to anyone. But I think there's always that natural stereotype of like social class. And it's just important to have that awareness.
Or that there was something wrong in your family, or that your parents did something wrong, or that something was going on in your family that isn't happening in other people's families.
Right. And I think in a way it is a problem in every single family in some way or form, even if it's really small. I think no matter what, pretty much any family around the world is going to have some type of problem with that.
Well, if you have 49 million adults suffering from substance use disorder, definitely it's affecting most people one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. And it's also a really wide variety of drugs. Like, I think when a lot of people think of overdoses and just addiction in general, they instantly think of the big ones like heroin or like meth or like weed or stuff like that. But it can go so much deeper. Like, addiction is a huge spectrum, and you can be addicted to, you know, almost anything. But I feel like, and this kind of goes back to my point originally, but years after Emily passed away, it's just me diving more into the concept overall and kind of broadening my perspective about it and being much more open to realizing it's not a super niche issue. It's very complex, and it takes years and years to fully understand and tackle the problem.
And here at Emily's Hope, we've been working for years to try to raise awareness about substance use disorder and the fentanyl epidemic, with the goal of preventing future tragedies. We also hope to be a place of comfort for those who are grieving, a reminder you're not alone. You can find more podcast episodes on our website at emilyshope.charity or wherever you get your podcasts. And we hope you'll join us next week as we continue our series on sibling loss. You hear from a Minnesota man who grew up watching his older brother battle addiction and eventually lose his life to fentanyl poisoning. His story is raw, emotional, and a powerful reminder of why this work matters.
There was some anger for sure. And I think I found myself sometimes blaming him for stuff that wasn't really fair in hindsight, you know, but being younger, I didn't know.
Hear what Will Ropp says he's learned about substance use disorder and grief since his brother's death, and how he's now fighting to make sure others who struggle with addiction get the help they need. That's next week on Grieving Out Loud. Until then, wishing you faith, hope, and courage. This podcast is produced by Casey Wanenberg King and Marley Miller. Are you ready to protect the next generation from the dangers of substance use? Emily's Hope has created a comprehensive K-12 substance use prevention curriculum designed to educate, empower, and equip students with the tools they need to make healthy choices. Our age-appropriate lessons start in kindergarten and build through high school, using science, real stories, and interactive learning to help kids understand their bodies, brains, and risk of drug use. We're already reaching thousands of students across multiple states, and we're just getting started. Visit emilyshopeedu.org to learn more and share our curriculum with your school administrators and counselors. At Emily's Hope, we believe prevention begins with education. Let's work together to keep our kids safe.